Do your houses look like this? Well, I'm sure they do, because you haven't watched this video yet. What's up, everybody on YouTube? How's everybody doing? I'm doing just fine. Doing awesome, actually. So today, welcome to a video where I'm going to be showing you guys 3 easy steps in how to improve your Minecraft houses. Now you might be thinking to yourself, hey, Blonde Skunk, this house isn't all that bad. And I'll give it that. It isn't that bad. You know, there are some steps, though, that can improve this by a long shot, and I'll show you what I mean in just a second. But just by looking at it, there's a few things missing, you know. There's no depth to this build. There's no interesting details in the roof, and there's no exterior details that give this build that little shine, that little sparkle that you want in your build. You want your friends to be like, oh, this is a cool house. You know, it might be a small house, but it's a cool house at the same time. And these tips that I'm going to show you today can apply to any house. They are just going to help you improve your general house building, okay? So let's get right into the first tip. I promise this is not a totally different house. And yes, the first tip does improve the house by a lot. And it's only the first tip, which is depth. And you might be thinking, well, that is crazy how much depth improves it. And it's not that hard. All we're doing is pushing these blocks back by 1 block and just leaving the framework on the outside. And really, it just gives the build so much more to look at, and it just changes it by a long shot. And we're not really doing much. All I'm doing is adding a few little exterior details by adding some slabs on the outside accordingly, and just, you know, giving it a little bit of that depth appeal. I also changed one thing up here by adding this stair going into this little window, and that just gives another little sense of depth in a small area like that. So definitely a great way to improve your houses. Make sure you are using depth. It's just such a great way of adding so much character, even to a small build like this, but you can also apply it to a bigger house as well. But make sure, if you're going to be adding depth, that your interior space, well, it's going to be a little bit small. But it's definitely worth it for the outside look. This next tip I'm about to talk about is pretty interesting because you wouldn't think of it as a big thing, like, my roof, you know, it's boring, whatever. Roofs are roofs. But roofs take up a good portion of your house. They're, you know, what makes the build a house or any build a build, because a roof is an essential piece to a build and to this house. So there are a few things going on here. Well, number one, I added a different color wood into this build. Now you can make a stone roof and use a different kind of stone to kind of break up. So for instance, you could use a stone brick as your border and then use cobble in the middle or andesite. And that gives another little level of detail, as you can see over here, where it's just this blank and just being one spruce wood roof. Looks pretty boring. We just kind of, you know, I guess spruced it up. I don't know if that makes sense in this case, but yeah, we've added a little bit of oak just to kind of break up the roof and give it a little bit more to look at. So if we come over here, you can see on this side, I really break it up by adding a window in here, and that really just changes up the build, makes it look a little bit different. It also makes the build not symmetrical. Well, to an extent, it's still a little bit symmetrical, but it just kind of changes it up, makes this side of the roof different from this side of the roof, and really gives it a lot more to look at, and really changes up the build entirely. And you can see, when you are doing your roofs, they're such an important part, and when you're changing them up like this, it really makes a difference in the build. You know, just going from this step to this step is a big difference. It looks like a lot of change, but it's not a lot of work, and it really does give a lot more to the build when you are changing up the roof like this. So make sure to add these little details when you're doing your houses, because, you know, when you have a blank roof, you know, go ahead, add a window in there. It might change it up and make it look really good. Now, if you're over here, you can see I've done something a little bit different with the underside of the roof. Yes, now this is super important, and you might see this on a lot of Minecraft builds actually, but it's such an essential part, and make sure to do it in your Minecraft houses because it makes the houses just look 10 times better. So all I've done here is I have added a slab on the bottom, a slab at the top, and then 2 stairs in the middle. And what that does is add this nice little roof. It kind of curves down. Now you could just add, stairs in these places right here. And you can see it does sort of the same effect, but, I like adding some slabs here at the ends just to kind of make it curve off a little bit and have a little bit of character. But just make sure to add some stairs underneath the stairs that hang over your build because it's such an important part in making your house have that little bit of character. And, let's see, it has that little bit of character to it. Looks really, really good. So we've gone through pretty much all the tips pretty quickly. But this last one is super important and has a lot of little tips in this one big tip. And this tip is detail. So we've gone over so far depth, we've gone over roofs, and we now have to go over detail because detail is major, and it's a lot of little tips within this one big tip because it does so much for the build. And get creative with this one. Really get creative. Try to really just hone the whole creativity side of your brain because, well, this is when it gets a little bit tricky because then you can add all these little details and this makes the build go, wow, I built that. That looks really, really good. And yeah, so with all these tips combined, you can end up with something like this. So again, we have a bunch of little details going on here. And I guess I could start with the one that stands out the most, and that is the chimney. The chimney. It's just a simple little chimney like this. It adds so much character, especially with the new addition of campfires. This is awesome. It adds for a lot of life to a build and gives a build a lot of character. Whereas comparison to this one, with no chimney, well, it doesn't have a lot of character, does it now? This does. This has a lot of character and really shows throughout the build. It really gives it a nice feel and makes it feel like it's lived in, like somebody's living in it, or, it's home-like. And that is a super, super important feature if you can add it into your house. Other little exterior details, some basic ones, leaves. Adding leaves to the outside of your house just scattered around can add a little bit of color to what is a boring build. Just using brown and gray, leaves do add that green color to it, and you can choose through a variety of leaves to add many different colors of green to your build, and it adds so much. Another little exterior detail is adding barrels with lanterns just scattered throughout the build. You can see I have it on the back side as well here. But this is something I love doing because it just adds that little bit of character, and it's so, so simple. And I highly recommend you guys doing it if you're building in this sort of style. Another little exterior detail is this little unit. I'm not really sure what it is, but it adds another it adds another level of depth. It's really cool. So you can add like little features like this to the outside of your build. So you can now see we have 2 levels of depth to the build, including the roof as well. But we also have little buttons, trap doors. I have trap doors at the feet of the build here just to give it a little bit of a stance, and it looks really, really cool. We also have this like little archery table here, which I think looks pretty cool as a little exterior detail. Make sure to go through and look at all the new blocks because you never know what you might find. Hello. You never know what you might find in the newer blocks and experimenting with those. And finally, on the outside here, I have a little blacksmith area or a little smithing area with the grindstone and the anvil, the little blast furnace as well, and a little chest out here to store all your goodies. And I thought that was a cool little feature. So again, that's just a little creative thing that you guys can do. There's so many little tips and so many little things that you can think of. And, just going through and adding so much to the build. couple other things just to go over here. I also mixed in a little bit of stripped logs accordingly to the planks. So, you know, stripped oak logs with oak planks really adds a little bit of detail to the build. So when you're doing this, you know, make sure it's a little bit uniformed and everything like that. But yeah, it just breaks up that oak texture, whereas before, you know, it's just one texture over here. It breaks up that and makes it a little bit of a different texture. It just, you know, adds that little bit of detail. It's very subtle, but it does so much for the build. Same thing, keeping on the same topic, you know, cobblestone with andesite, mixing that all in together. So as you can see here, I also do a little bit of stone brick here and there, just dabbled here and there. But andesite and cobble, they are like brother and sister. They work so well together, and I highly recommend you guys use them. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Hopefully you got a little bit of inspiration and maybe a little bit of insight on building houses and the little bit of the process that I go through when I'm building houses. Because, you know, when I'm building houses, these are the steps that I follow. These are the things that I go through and make sure that I have in my build. You know, depth, make sure my roof is interesting, make sure there's a lot of little exterior details. Just go crazy, add leaves, barrels, everything. You know, get creative with your build. Get creative with it, and I'm sure you guys will love your houses after this video. Building your houses and having a fun time. Now, if you are an experienced builder and you guys love building houses, you also have tips to share with me. Hey, let me know down in the comments below. Let me know what tips you guys have for building houses. What are the steps that you guys go through when you're thinking of, you know, maybe building your spawn house for a server or something like that. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this video, and let me know of your tips. And yeah, that's gonna do it. As always, guys, don't forget to be awesome, and I will see you guys next time.